Okay, video number 2 of the day. Hey guys, my name is Victoria, welcome back to my channel. As you can probably hear, I'm still a bit sick. I'm clogged and everything sounds really bad, but I am back with videos. Today, I'm filming my very late November wrap-up. Usually, as you know, if you've been here on this channel for a while now, I upload these videos in the first week of the new month, but because I was sick with the flu, I wasn't able to film, and I thought of maybe not doing a November wrap-up, but I read some really cool books. 2 of my favorite, probably of this year, are in this month, or were in this month, so I thought, okay, I just have to film it. If you're interested, keep on watching. I'm going to talk about all the books that I've read in November. I read 5 books in November. Let's get to it before this intro gets too long. I put some notes on my iPad, so I'm gonna read it. The first book I read was The Turn of the Screw by Henry James. I gave this book 2.5 stars. It's a classic. I don't know when it was written. 18 something? I don't know. So this book is about a governess, and she gets a job to look out for 2 kids, Miles and Flora, in Bly Manor. Bly Manor is a place, or a house in Bly, and she's just there to watch the kids and, you know, govern them. Do what governess did back then. Now everything seems normal in the beginning, though the 2 kids are described as weird, but soon things start happening and our governess starts seeing weird things and starts to believe in ghosts and that this place that she lives in now is haunted. And if this plot sounds familiar to you, you might know it because a Netflix show that I love very much is based on this book. The Haunting of Bly Manor is based on The Turn of the Screw. And I, for some reason, missed that. I watched this show 3 times and I did not recognize, I did not realize it was based on this book by Henry James. Now, I liked the plot, but I wasn't really connected to the characters. I have that a lot with novellas and classical novellas. I also wasn't a huge fan of Henry James's writing style. I was confused at times. It was sometimes hard to follow, in my opinion, even though it's such a short book. But yeah, I wasn't the biggest fan, and I probably wouldn't have cared that much if I wasn't already intrigued because the show was so great. I like the show better, I gotta be honest, and I think I would like this book more if I were to analyze it and if I were to go really deep into it, but just listening to it and for, like, I don't know, my enjoyment, I just didn't like it that much. I liked it, but I didn't like it that much. The next book was one of the best books I've ever read. I read, or listened to, My Dark Vanessa by Kate Elizabeth Russell. I gave this book 5 stars, and I want to put in a trigger warning and also remind you guys that if you're interested in this book, please check the trigger warnings, because this book is about, I'm kind of quoting here, the exploration of the psychological dynamics of the relationship between a precocious yet naive teenage girl and her magnetic and manipulative teacher. Vanessa is 15 when she meets Jacob Strain, her teacher, who is 42 years old. And they do start a physical relationship when she is 15. I talked briefly about this in one of my most recent videos, Show Me a Book That, for the category A Book That Gives You the Creeps. It is very uncomfortable. If you're uncomfortable with just that information of the plot, that's what it is. This book is incredibly disturbing, but I loved it. Not because I loved the idea of this plot, obviously, but I loved the execution of this idea on this discussion, because it is a topic that we do discuss at times. And the way that it was written was so gripping and it was so thrilling, and I could not stop listening to this book. This book is very long. I think it was 16 hours, and I listened to that in a matter of 2 days or 3 days. Sometimes I need like a week for an 8-hour audiobook, but this was amazing. It was exciting, it was very detailed, and it really gave me the creeps, definitely. I loved the narrator of the audiobook, and I just could not stop listening to that very disturbing but also multifaceted story. Because our protagonist, the character Vanessa, she believes that she loves him and she thinks it's a love story. And we jump in time, so we have her as her 15-year-old self, 20-year-old or 22, and then also her 30-year-old self. And you see the relationships start and evolve and then change. And that also happens with Vanessa's perspective on the whole thing. Vanessa thinks that it's love. She doesn't care what anybody else says, and even though she knows that it's like illegal and disturbing for others, she never lets herself believe that what Strain is doing is horrible and terrible, that he invades her mind and just gets in there and wreaks havoc and she doesn't even realize it. And I can't talk about it in a good way, because if you hear the plot, you're like, this is horrible. And yes, it is. It definitely is. There's not a single occasion in this book where you think that the author wanted the reader to think, oh, but maybe it is love, and maybe it is good, and maybe this has good sides. This book really made it clear that this whole relationship was toxic from the start. It's disturbing. I can't find a different word, but it was so good. Just the story was so good. You wanted to know what happened next. And honestly, there were moments where I thought, okay, I don't know if I can continue listening, because this is really not something for the faint of heart, guys. Some scenes are very, very explicit. I want you to check the trigger warnings. Even though I think it's a great execution of this kind of difficult and multifaceted topic, and I loved it, I gave it 5 stars after all, I cannot recommend this book wholeheartedly, because I know that it's really hard to listen to and really hard to read and experience, but I loved it. Before I talk too much about this, I think I talked for 10 minutes now. I always hate when I talk so much. Anyway, okay, next book. Another 5-star read. A book that I am so in love with. Wolf Song by TJ Klune. I bought this year. This actually came out in 2015. I didn't even know that, but I saw this. I pre-ordered this copy when I saw it on Twitter, because I follow the author on Twitter. And I had to have it because I read 2 books by TJ Klune, and I decided that I will read anything by TJ Klune from now on, because I fall in love with his characters so quickly, and I love the universe and the world and the characters he creates. There's nothing particularly very special about the writing itself. I always say that because I am a huge fan of poetic and flowery and imagery heavy writing. It's not the case with his books, but I just see so much color whenever I think of his books. Before I talk too much about that, let's talk about Wolf Song. I was depressed in November. I didn't go to university for a week, and I had to distract myself from this. And this was the best distraction ever. You see, this is a big book. This has almost 600 pages, and I have a hard time currently with like reading a book without listening to it, because sometimes I just can't focus on the words because my head's elsewhere. I read this in 2 days. I read this so quickly because I couldn't stop reading. Let's get to the plot. So Wolf Song is a fantasy novel. Our protagonist, Ox, he's a very shy kid. He doesn't talk too much. He's scarred by the abandonment of his father. When a person that's supposed to love you unconditionally leaves and doesn't love you and tells you, he actually tells Ox multiple times that he's stupid and that he doesn't have anything special. There's a lot happening to a child, and you see that. So I wouldn't describe Ox as a broken character, but he's definitely a shy character. So when he's 16, there's a family moving into the house across the street. It's the Bennett family, and everyone talks about them in like their city. Everyone is like, oh, they're weird and no one's really talking to them, and they kind of live in their own universe in a way, which makes sense. Because this family is, first of all, huge, it's big, and I mean, this book is called Wolf Song. They're werewolves. I don't think that's a spoiler. I think that's like in the premise of the story. And Ox has a special connection to one of the boys, and then starts having a connection with the entire family, and then eventually becomes part of that family. And it was so good. I loved it so much. There is a love story at the center of it, at the heart of it. In the beginning it is a bit weird because there is an age difference between the two, and they meet when one of them is young, like a kid, or barely, not even a teenager yet, and you think, huh? But listen, there's no grooming, there's nothing. Ox never thought of that character in that way before he was of age. Like there was I just want to say it. I thought it would be a bit weird. I thought, wait, they're supposed to be in love later, but he's, you know, he's 12 and I don't know how that would work, but we jump in time. I didn't have a problem with their age difference at all because their dynamics change. I loved it. It was so good. Next to that love story, the family and the love that they have, and also the plot in general, like they face evil in this fantasy world, is just so good. I loved it so much. I cried because it was funny. I cried because I was sad. I don't know, I can't remember the last time I cried over a book that was not from the Shadowhunter Chronicles. I was heavily invested into their characters, into their story, into all of their connections, and I loved them all a lot. And I just want you guys to know there's explicit content in this book. So if you're not a fan of very detailed, heavily explicit content, I think you could still read this book and just skip over the chapter. It was good. Anyway, this book got me out of a reading slump, so I'm so happy about that. And I couldn't stop reading. I loved it so much. I kind of would have liked a bit more imagery in this writing, but there was lots of dialogue, and essentially it's about the characters and it's not like poetry. So it's fine, it's fine. But yeah, 5 stars, loved it. Maybe my favorite book of the year. The 4th book I read or listened to was a memoir by Jeanette McCarty, I'm Glad My Mom Died. This is a book that was very popular, I think, in October or in September. A lot of people read it when it just came out. Jeanette McCarty was an actress, or is an actress, and she rose to fame through iCarly. She played the part of Sam Puckett. And this is her story of how she got into acting and all relation to her mother, because her mother is essentially the reason why she ever auditioned or ever got into this business. I gave this 4 stars. I liked her way of writing. Just listening to her story was just so interesting. And I noticed that I need to read more memoirs. I think it's so interesting to just read someone's story. It doesn't matter if they're famous or not. If they have a story to tell and they're willing to tell, I'm just glad to be listening. Please check the trigger warnings for this book. She talks a lot about mental health. She talks heavily about eating disorders, and at some parts it wasn't triggering for me, but it reminded me of a lot of things that I had to deal with as well. So, you know, just want you guys to know eating disorders are heavily discussed in this book, and if you're sensitive to that, maybe not listen, or maybe don't give this book a read. But overall, it was a really great reading experience. I can't say too much about the plot because it's just her story and how her relationship with her mom was so complicated, and I'm always really interested into people's stories. I just think it's interesting to hear what happened in their lives. It was a great reading experience or listening experience, and she read the audiobook and I loved it. And the last book I read or listened to last month in November was Sorrow and Bliss by Mac Mason. I gave this book 3.5 stars, and the main character in this book is Martha, and she knows that something's wrong with her, but she doesn't know what is wrong with her. This book generally just discusses issues and struggles of mental health, love and marriage, but also just living, just life in general, in a very, very interesting way, because that book was sad and funny at the same time. Like, one sentence could make you cry and the next could make you laugh. The writing was interesting. I gotta say that I didn't feel that connected to the characters. I was able to relate to some of the stuff. While listening, it didn't grip me as much, for example, my dog Vanessa did. But I think it's a very important story about someone who is dealing with mental health and is seeing therapists, but just in her, I think in her 40s, realizes what is actually wrong and what she has. And she has a certain disease that is not mentioned. It's always just X. And you can Google what that disease is afterwards if you want. I did. For some, it might be pretty clear what she's dealing with. I don't know how to feel about that disease not being mentioned. It is a mental illness that is stigmatized a lot, and I totally understand why the author didn't want the reader to immediately be like subjective or, I don't know, biased by their general knowledge about that disease. But I don't know how to feel about it, because I think if you had mentioned it, then maybe you could be part of the reduction of that stigmata. But I don't know. Again, this is a book that you should check the trigger warnings for. I really liked it. Again, it was sad and funny, the same page. I think it's worth giving that a shot. This book wasn't that special to me, but I just loved listening to a story of a character that deals with mental health or mental illnesses and lives with them every day. And that's what it is. The daily struggles, what people have to go through who deal with mental health. And you all know, if you've been here on my channel for some time, how important mental health is for me and how important it is to be transparent. And yeah, I'm really glad that I read it, and I think it'd be a book that I would recommend. Now, this was actually it. This was my reading month in November, and I think I'm gonna end this video on this note. Let me know what books you've read recently, what books you've loved. My highlight was probably Wolf Song, even though I loved my dog Vanessa. This book has a special place in my heart. I love Wolfsong. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up and comment down below what you would like to see next. Subscribe to my channel and click the bell to never miss an upload. If you want to be updated on everything regarding my channel, or just, I don't know, if you're interested, you can follow me on my Instagram. Social media is down below, and the links to educate yourself on the war or donate to people who really need it right now. My camera is dying, I need to hurry up. I currently don't really have a schedule. I try to upload as much as I can, and now that I'm not sick anymore, I finally can film videos again. Yeah, I think this is it. Thank you so much for watching, guys. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll hopefully see you in my next video. Bye! I gave this book 2 and a 5. Haven't filmed these videos in a month. Already don't know how to do it. I gave this book 2 and a 5. And just... Jetzt habe ich meinen Faden verloren. It is a mental health. It is a mental health. It is a mental health. If you want to update it on anything, if you want to be, okay, this gotta be enough. Bye, guys. Bye.